What could have been done to prevent this attack?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we found, Tom, that there's a litany of errors going back to 2010 where the suspect, or rather the bomber, had been on various lists at various times. His behaviour had been suspect a long way through. We found various interventions that could have happened at various times. By far the worst, though, was that in the run-up to the actual bombing, firstly, he'd been to Libya, which should have, been a red flag straight away, given what was going on there with his family and beyond, and he wasn't sort of questioned when he came back. And secondly, there was specific intelligence that could have led to the car where he was storing his explosives prior to making the bomb. And that also was not acted upon. And unfortunately, he then went, built it and detonated it.
Do we know why this intelligence wasn't acted upon? Is this about resourcing, or is this about simply failures of leadership?
Well, there was firstly questions about the way that various agencies, the police, the Secret Services, work together on the subject. But there's also analysis. Intelligence filters in. And of course, as you all know, you get lots of intelligence coming in over lots of different subjects, and somebody has to sort it through, see the wood from the trees and pick it up, basically, and go, that's significant, I've got to deal with it. So I think there was a failure of analysis in this case, and sadly that had tragic consequences.
It is remarkable how few, perhaps, over the course of the last 2 decades, how few large attacks have actually got through. We hear quite often from the security services, or at least via the security services, that big attacks are stopped all the time. Was this a case of something just slipping through the net, or is there something more fundamental wrong here?
Well, I think you're quite right to point out that we start off from this basis that the security services in general have done a great job in preventing these cases. I think if people knew the number and the severity of what could have come down the line, they would be quite grateful for that. But the sad truth is the bomber only has to get through once for there to be a tragedy. And in this case, unfortunately, down the line, many signs were not picked up. I mean, he went to prison to visit radicalised terrorists who were in prison, basically, people who were locked up already. That was a mistake. They didn't know what was happening there. Earlier, there was misogynistic behaviour that might have been linked to his extremist beliefs. That wasn't picked up. So all the way down the line, unfortunately, in his case, he wasn't referred properly to the PREVENT programme. It wasn't taken up. So here you have a whole series of things that went wrong that if even one of them had been picked up, this might have ended differently.
Now, just finally, do you have confidence in the government and the security services to learn these lessons and change how they do things, to pick up these signs in a more comprehensive way in the future?
Well, I do, because I think, this has been a cathartic moment for the security services in particular, and you've seen the reaction. Obviously, the families, understandably, do not accept the apology, but I've never seen the Secret Services make an apology. So, from that sense, you can see there is some learning happening here. But I also take heart from the fact we had the PREVENT review, of course, last week, suggesting we've got to get serious with radical Islam, which remains, of course, the main threat to this country, despite the attempts by woke civil servants, political correctness, to drive it off the agenda. It's there, and there's only one sort of set of people who are going out right now trying to blow up kids